Initially, I would like to start with the DNS configuration. So I have given a brief overview of the DNS server in the last session. I just want to quickly recap what we have seen regarding DNS server. So as I've said, domain name service. So basically, it helps for translating the host name and to IP address and IP address to host name. Okay. So first of all, what is the need for such conversion? So if you take a typical network or the World Wide Web, so ideally if one host communicates with another host using the IP address, the basic communication happens using IP address. And not only that, for a normal user, in order to access any web page over the net, it is impossible to remember the IP addresses or IP addresses of the machines which we want to access, right? So in order to simplify that process, so there is the corresponding host name concept. So host name or your domain name. So every IP address will be mapped to a host name, and it is easy for us to remember the host names rather than comparing to the IP addresses. For example, it is easy to remember Amazon.com, Google.com, or Reddit.com, or some mail.google.com, which is the mail server of Google. Like that, we can. It is easy for a normal for everyone to remember the host names. Okay, and now if you remember the host name and if you type www.google.com, right? So what it does is the DNS server it will pull the records. I mean the host name and the corresponding IP address, and it will route your request to that particular host which is present on the World Wide Web. I hope this concept is a bit clear now. So this is the main reason why we have these DNS servers. Like that, across the World Wide Web, we have a lot of root or the master DNS servers, slave DNS servers. So these DNS servers are distributed across the World Wide Web. You can consider this as one distributed system. So the DNS server it maintains a database of these mappings of all these records, host to IP and IP to host. All right, and this system is completely distributed across the World Wide Web. It is the best example for a distributed database. It maintains and it not only maintains it, it processes millions of requests per day. All the users who are present on the World Wide Web, they send the requests. So in order to access a mail server or a web server, all right, and all these conversions, they do happen, and every DNS server, they participate in this conversion process. All right. Now, as a part of the DNS, on how to configure the DNS servers, so we have seen some of the few slides which talk about top level domains and subdomains and all. So here in this slide, if you can see, we have the entire tree structure where we are starting from root. We have all the top level domains which are present, under which we have all the subdomains and all. This is how the entire web is this is how it is structured, it is present. Okay, and in this list we have, just like these individual branches that you can see, there would be a top level root DNS servers, and then we have further down the line, and in the subdirectories or the sub branches, you will have other DNS servers present. Okay, and primarily to distinguish or to categorize, if you want to categorize the DNS servers, there are 4 different types of DNS servers present. Alright, the first one is the master DNS server, or you can also call it as the authoritative servers. Say you have created your own domain, some domain, some www.xyz.com. Similarly, so that is your say it's your web server. Alright, similarly you have configured your own mail server like mail.xyz.com. So here, what you did is, apart from these 2 servers, you have configured, you wanted to maintain your own DNS server. All right. So this DNS server, so this is the DNS server that maintains the information about your domain, whatever you have created, xyz.com, right? So when you have configured this, and when these services are connected to this DNS server, so that is like a router that is connected to the external world, your DNS server. So any request that comes to these services will be served by this DNS server. So this is the main server or the authoritative server that maintains the information about your domains or your services. So that kind of server is called as the authoritative or the master DNS server that contains the main information of the domains. It maintains the information of the domain. Okay. So and then we have slave servers, slave DNS servers. Slave DNS server basically what it does is it always tries to sync these records from a master server. Alright, so a master server maintains a list of all the domains that it is responsible for, and it is configured along with the slave server. And this slave server, what it does is after every some particular interval of time that said, it tries to sync all the information which is there inside your master server, and then it tries to search the requests to the outside world from that information. Okay, and then we have another server called as caching only DNS server, the third one. And this server, what it does is whenever a request is sent to the DNS service, and if that record is not present in its database, what it does is, so here as you can see this hierarchy, it sends a request to a DNS server which is present in the in the next level, which is higher in this tree structure. So basically it is like every DNS server it plays a dual role, like for the servers as I've said before, which is present in the upper level. So it tries to serve the if the records are not present inside the database, it sends a request to its master, which is one level higher in the tree structure. If that is not present even in that authoritative server or the DNS server, so that way the request will be sent up the tree structure, and finally it reaches the topmost root DNS server. So that is the last DNS server which maintains the entire record of all the information. So if the information is not present anywhere in the tree structure, finally the root DNS server will provide the information, and then automatically the main server that is requested. So if it is a caching server, what it does is it maintains a copy of that record inside the cache, and then it serves the request. So that is how a caching only server will work. And then we have another category called as forwarding servers. So its main job is to whenever a request comes, it will try to identify the corresponding DNS server that can serve this request, and it will simply forward that request to that DNS server. Alright, so like that we have some categories, and today we'll see how to configure the master DNS server. Okay, like our own DNS server. Alright, so here just some important what do you say, terms or terminology as a part of DNS server is. So one thing that is clear is, so it is mainly useful for mapping, IP address to host name and host name to IP address, right? And when we say host name, so we need to remember FQDN, fully qualified domain name. So starting from right to left, if you start from right to left, .com is the topmost domain, root level domain that is present, and then we have a subdomain called XYZ, and then again we have our host or whatever the service that is there, for example mail.google.com, like that, and then we have www, say it's a web service or some other service like that. So that is how it is structured. So basically the DNS maintains these records, so it will maintain a mapping of host name to IP address as well as the IP address to host name. Sometimes you might have also observed if you simply do a dig, I think I've showed you a dig space google.com, so it will display a list of IP addresses. That means that single website, google.com, is internally mapped to multiple IP addresses. All right. In case if one host is down, your request will be served by another host or another host or another host, like that. So multiple IPs are mapped to a single host name. So similarly, what we can do is inside your DNS records, we can maintain a mapping of all the IP addresses and the corresponding host name. So that is what we call it as the alias name or CNAME. I'll show you those records. So we have like that. We have address records, which is a mapping of your host and IP address, and then we will also get to see MX records, which are related to your mail servers, and then we will also see CNAME, that is your alias names, having multiple alias names for your host names. We will also get to see such kind of records inside. And the next important thing for DNS server is the DNS server basically it maintains two zones. One is a forward lookup zone and the other one is the reverse lookup zone. Forward lookup zone, it's like host name to IP address, and the reverse has IP to host name records. Okay, so we can the request can be sent either way. So here when we do dig google.com, we get host name and the set of IP addresses, right? So we can access google.com either using the host name or using the IP address also. Alright, even if you hit that IP address, you would land up with in the Google web page. Okay, so like that we maintain all the records inside these two zones. So after installing the package, so bind Berkeley Internet name it domain. It is the main package. So let me quickly show you the list of all the packages. Alright, so bind utils and bind -chroot. These are the list of packages that you need to install, and we have our daemon called this is a named daemon. Along with this, we also have another service called RNDC that mainly helps us, in order to protect your named service. In order to protect your named service, there is another service called RNDC. We'll see that later. And then we have our ports. The default port is 53 on which your DNS server runs. Okay, so let's see the configuration files. So this is about configuring a master DNS server. Okay, so once you have installed the packages, rpm qa grep bind. So once you have installed the packages, so you will have your main configuration file, that is /etc/nameit.conf. So this particular sample of this configuration file is present in a different location, that is your var named chroot. We'll see that folder, the other contents of that folder as well. So now that I have installed these packages, you can get a list of the packages available in the presentation itself. So once that is installed, I'll just list nameit.conf. This is the configuration file, and another important folder is your var named chroot. Okay, so here you can see. You will get to see some files here, that is name.localhost and name.loopback. So these are your sample files that are available. You can make use of these sample files in order to create your zone files. Okay, so so we are in var named chroot, again var named. So this is the location of the zone files. Here I have created two sample zone files. So before looking into these files, we'll see our main configuration file, which is etc named.conf. Okay, so after you perform installing, once you have installed your DNS server, so the first thing what we have to do is we need to open nameit.conf. Okay, here actually we are running the DNS server on the default port, and this DNS server, we need to configure the local IP address that that the DNS server should point to. So this is the one. So this is the main change, the first thing that we have to do. And once this is done, we need to allow the users or requests which are coming from our network. We can restrict the users who can send their requests to this DNS server. So if you can see here, there is another parameter, allow query. So apart from localhost, have given this subnet range 192.168.0.0/24. So that is all the users which are present in this subnet range. So it's like 192.168.0.0 to 192.168.255.255. So all the users with this IP address range, they'll be able to query the DNS server. Okay. And okay, so this is the basic change that you will make. And once that is done, here you can see the two zones that I've configured here. So this is forward lookup zone, and this is your reverse lookup zone. So in the forward lookup zone, the main thing is we need to name it. The naming convention is up to you. There is nothing, it's nothing specific. All right. So here I have just mentioned it as serencentoys.com, and the second zone it's just some naming convention I have followed. So one thing to remember is the type of the DNS server that we are configuring, that we mentioned here as the master. So if it is a slave configuration, it must be a slave. So we'll see the slave configuration once we are done with the master part. Okay. So the name of the zone is seren-centoisvm.com, and the corresponding file, so this is the zone file. Okay, and that is named as something ending with, the same name ending with the zone. Okay, so this is the basic configuration. So once this is done, we need to create files with the same name. You can see that okay, so these are the two files that I have already created with the same names. Okay, and one thing we have to ensure is, so these files must be part of the group called as named, irrespective of the owner. So they must belong to a group called named. So this group automatically gets created when you install the DNS server. Okay. Now, so we have now you can take the samples, sample or the default configurations from this. I have mentioned this before. ls. Okay, name.loopback and name.localhost. So let me show you one after the another. So the first one is the forward lookup zone. Okay, so here there are some parameters that you have to define. In fact, these parameters, the topmost, let me tell you from the sample file that you have taken, so the list of changes that you have to make. The first one is the start of the authority. So this is basically the master server which maintains your domain. All right. So we start from the host name that is maintaining the DNS server. All right. So followed by the root.host name, and so these are the default parameters which are present as a part of your sample file as well. All right. And then we have a few more configurations, starting with NS, the name server. NS means this is the domain DNS server or the name server. And then so at basically represents our domain, the current domain. And then we have the mapping of the current domain to the corresponding IP address. All right. So here I have mentioned two different IPs. One is for the local host, and the second one is for a different machine which is part of my network. All right. And then what I did is I have did a mapping of my domain and the corresponding IP address. Okay. Now we'll see the other file. So here similarly we have a mapping of similar mappings. Alright, the first these parameters would remain the same, and then we have a similar mappings. Alright, so the name server, corresponding address record, and the corresponding pointer record. Here if you observe, it's the last octet of the IP address 8, okay, which is pointing to this particular host name. Okay, so if you want to add another record, similarly what you do is you need to add the last octet, say a different host in my network like 192.168.1.9. so here 9 space IN and the corresponding pointer record followed by that particular host name, and make sure that both the hosts belong to the same domain. So that is important. Okay, so I would have added my other machine as well, but the host name is saran-ubuntu.vm.com. That shouldn't be the case here. Okay. Alright, so once this is done, what you can do is you can simply restart our DNS server, and a few important commands that I wanted to mention here are, so once you have configured your DNS server like our DHCP and Apache services, there are commands to cross check whether we have properly configured these services or not. Okay, we'll see those commands. The one is service, the daemon name is named, and it's config test. Alright, so this will tell you whether you have properly configured your configuration file or not. Okay, and we also have chk so now that configuration has been properly done, so now we start our service, that is service name and status. Alright, so our service is up and running now. So once this is done, so basically what we did is we have configured a DNS server. Alright, so this is the server configuration. Okay, and we need to ensure that the DNS server is working fine. So dig and www.saran-centroSVM.com. So we perform the dig operation on this. So what should happen is, see, if you can see in the answer section, whatever we have configured inside the zone files. So this particular host name, that is the address record that is mapping the IP address, corresponding IP address. So it should display a bunch of information. Basically this information has multiple sections. The first section is all about what we have requested, all the information associated, and then we have our question, what was the response that the DNS server has given. Alright, and the next one is the authority section. It points to the authoritative server that is responsible for this, and then the amount of time that the request has taken to get the response. Alright, the server has taken to give a response, the total time. Alright, and another way we can also try doing this the other way, dig-x, we can do a reverse querying 192.168.1.8. So similarly we can also perform this reverse lookup. Okay, so this is how we configure a master DNS server. Okay, now I will quickly show you the corresponding slave configuration on how to configure a slave. So I'm not going to change anything here, and another important thing that I have not mentioned, so this is what a DNS server configuration is. So correspondingly you need to point your client to this DNS server. So if you go to client machine, then what we have to do is there is a file called etcresult.conf that maintains the records of the name servers. So here if you see 192.168.1.1, so this is my router, or I can say that so all my requests that are going to the outside, I mean my request over the internet, they're going to my service provider through this particular name server. That is the service provider has provided this particular name server, and the next is the one I have configured. Say if you have a private network and you have configured a DNS server, your requests will be routed to that DNS server, that is 192. So inside in the client machine, what you have to do is you have to simply mention this DNS server IP address inside the etc resolve.conf, and once you have mentioned it, you can try performing these same commands, that is dig and dig-x. Let's try doing the same from this machine. Let's see if it works. So let me first ping 192.168. .1.8. So it is reachable, and my IP address, oops, it has got the same IP address. Alright, so vi etc resolve.conf. So here what I'll do is I'll mention so I'm just telling you what must be done in a client machine. Okay, you 192.168.1.8, I've changed it. So once that is done, we will perform dig.saran-centosvm.com. So ideally once so once it is done here, okay, one second. Okay, this is the authoritative record. Let me comment out or remove this. Okay, now let's try what it gives. Okay, if I refresh the network, automatically since it is connected to internet, it will get updated. Okay, so from the client you just have to update the DNS server and the resolve.conf, and then you can use the dig and dig-x commands, or you can also perform an ns lookup space dot saran-centosvm.com like this. Okay, then ideally it has to display the corresponding DNS server and the corresponding IP address. That information we can cross check on the DNS server itself here. ns lookup okay, so this is how the output should be. Alright, so this is about the master configuration, how to configure the master DNS server. Now let's see how to configure the client machine. So that basically what does, its job is to sync the records, take a copy of all the records which are present in the master. And in order to perform that, the first thing that we do is just like the master server, we install all the packages, and then we go to name.conf. So all the list of config files as well as the folder structure, everything would remain the same except a few changes. So here inside your name.conf, here I have commented out a few lines here. Alright, so if you compare, at the top we have the master configuration and at the bottom we have slave configuration. Both would look similar except that the type is master and here the type is slave, and then the previously our zone files are present under the folder structure var named, chroot var named, but now especially for the slave zone files, the folder structure will be different. It's going to be var named slaves folder. Okay, we'll see that folder. Okay, and then the next thing is we need to mention that this slave must sync from the master. If you have multiple masters, we can also mention all the multiple IP addresses here. So next to the fourth line for masters. So this is about the master config. This is about the slave configuration. Okay, so once this has been done in the name.conf, you can similarly use service named chkconfig no, it's config test, service named config test, to check whether the configuration has been properly done or not, and then go to var named and slaves. Okay, so this is the folder. Here what you have to do is just create, just like for the master server, create two files, okay, for forward lookup zone as well as the reverse lookup zone, and inside the zones similarly just mention the records. So it should be the master records that must be defined inside the configuration files, and then from them what happens is the slave would automatically keep getting the information from the master, and it will simply update the records which are present as a part of the zone files. Okay, so this is pretty much about the slave configuration. So I mean, try configuring these services. I hope you have my email address. In case if you have any queries, feel free to drop me a mail. I will be helping you with any of your doubts or queries that you have. So with this, we are done with the server configurations.